the connective tissue in a free society. It deepens the well of our common humanity. Throughout his life of service, President Bush personified grace. His character was second to none. He reached the heights of power with uncommon humility. He made monumental contributions to freedom with a fundamental decency that resonates across generations. No one better harmonized the joy of life and the duty of life. There's that indelible image of him as Commander-in-Chief during the Gulf War, waving to a sea of troops during a visit during Thanksgiving. There are all these images we have of him as a devoted husband, that twinkle in his eye that Barbara always brought out, especially in those big, huge family photos you all had in Kennebunkport. This one I will never forget. There was that image of him as a loving father reaching out to hold his son's hand at the National Cathedral after 9/11. There's this letter he wrote his children on the last day of 1990 as he wrestled with a decision over Operation Desert Storm. He begins by recounting the family Christmas, and he apologized if he seemed distracted. "I tried not to be," he writes. Then for about a page, he elaborates on his struggle over sending young Americans into harm's way. Twice in the letter, he writes, "Every human life is precious." And the original copy, he adds by hand a note wishing his family a new year. In consequential times, George Herbert Walker Bush demonstrated the finest qualities of our nation and of humankind. A great leader and a good man. A gentle soul of firm resolve. He showed us that how we live is as important as what we achieve. His life was a hymn of honor. His legacy is grace perfected. His memory will belong to glory. God bless the 41st President of the United States.
Speaker Ryan, Leader McConnell, Leader Schumer, Leader Pelosi, members of Congress, distinguished guests, but most of all, President George W. Bush, Governor Jeb Bush, Neil, Marvin, Dole, and the entire Bush family. It is deeply humbling to stand before you today at the beginning of a week in our nation's capital when we will commemorate and celebrate the lifetime of service and leadership of the 41st President of the United States, President George Herbert Walker Bush. The Bible tells us to mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And today, on behalf of the First Family and my family and the American people, we offer our deepest sympathies and respects to your family. And we thank you for sharing this special man with our nation and the world. Today, President Bush becomes the 32nd American to lie in state in the United States Capitol Rotunda. Soon, Americans from every corner of the country and every walk of life will make their way to this rotunda to pay the respects of a grateful nation. Upon the death of Abner, it is written that King David said, "Do you not realize that a commander and a great man has fallen in Israel this day?" George Herbert Walker Bush was such a man. While he was known as the quiet man, it was not for lack of nerve or daring, for in all of his 94 years, President Bush never lost his love of adventure, and he never failed to answer the call to serve his country. Born into a tradition of public service, George Herbert Walker Bush began his own life of service when he was still in high school. After the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, he wanted to do his part, so he enlisted in the United States Navy on his 18th birthday. On receiving his wings, he became the nation's youngest naval aviator and was sent to the South Pacific, where his story almost ended. September 1944, on a bombing raid over Chichijima, his aircraft was hit. His engine caught fire, but he still managed to hit his target before bailing out and being rescued by American forces after some 4 hours at sea. All told, he flew 58 combat missions. And for his bravery under fire, he earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, which would have been enough honor for any American life. But George Herbert Walker Bush was just getting started. After he came home, he staked his claim to a booming post-war America by making a name for himself in the oil business. For 4 years, he walked these halls as a congressman from Houston. President Nixon took notice of the young Texan and asked him to be our ambassador to the United Nations. He led our party during a tumultuous time for the presidency, and after earning the respect of another president, he did the work of a diplomat as the first United States envoy to China and led the CIA. And then, for 8 years, George Herbert Walker Bush served as the 43rd Vice President of the United States. I'm told as he was preparing to become Vice President, he once joked about the job, saying that there was, quote, "nothing substantive to do at all." But as history records, during those years, he set the standard as a sound counselor and loyal advisor to an outsider who came to Washington, D.C. to shake things up, cut taxes, rebuild the military, and together they did just that. And then, in 1988, he made history again, when George Herbert Walker Bush was elected in a landslide as the 41st President of the United States of America, becoming the first sitting Vice President to win the presidency in more than 150 years of our history. He served during an uncertain time in the world, made momentous by his leadership. President Bush oversaw the fall of the Soviet Union, the crumbling of the Berlin Wall, and under his leadership, America won the Cold War. He took our nation to war to repel aggression in the Persian Gulf, and through his leadership as Commander-in-Chief and the brilliance of our armed forces, the United States won a decisive victory. When President George Herbert Walker Bush left office, he left America and the world more peaceful, prosperous, and secure. President Bush was a great leader who made a great difference in the life of this nation. But he was also just a good man who was devoted to his wife, his family, and his friends. I was lucky enough to meet him in 1988 when he was vice president, and I was a 29-year-old just getting started in politics. Then, as always, I was struck by his approachability. There was a kindness about the man that was evident to everyone who ever met him. All his years in public service were characterized by kindness, modesty, and patriotism. He was so modest, in fact, that he never wrote an autobiography. But he did leave a record of his life in the thousands of letters that he wrote. I'm told that he started writing letters to his parents when he was 18 years old. And over time, his circle of correspondence grew to include family, friends, advisors, staff, business associates, former presidents, and just about anyone who would take the trouble to write to him. After a lifetime of writing letters, my son got one just not too long ago. As I told two of his sons this weekend, when our son made his first tailhook landing as a Marine aviator on the USS George Herbert Walker Bush, I took the liberty of writing the ship's namesake to ask for a small favor. I didn't write him as a vice president to a former president. I just wrote as a proud dad of a Marine aviator to a former Navy pilot. I asked him to sign a picture of the flight deck that I could give to my son. Now, we were told by the staff that the president had long since ended the practice of signing autographs, and we understood that. But little to my surprise, just in time for my son's winging, there came not only a signed photograph, but, of course, a letter, hand-signed as well, August 2018. In that letter, President Bush wrote to my son, in his words, "Congratulations on receiving your wings of gold. I know how proud you and your family are at this moment." And then, in words that assured us that the letter came directly from him, he wrote, quote, "Though we have not met, I share the pride your father has for you during this momentous occasion, and I wish you many CAVU days ahead. All the best, G. Bush." I would come to learn that acronym, CAVU for short, is a term Navy pilots have used since World War II. It stands for Ceiling and Visibility Unlimited. President Bush described CAVU, in his words, as the kind of weather we Navy pilots wanted when we were to fly off our carrier in the Pacific. And he once wrote a letter to his children saying that CAVU, in his words, describes my own life as it's been over the years and as it is right now. Ceiling and visibility unlimited. You know, that may well describe the essence of this man. And it may well have been his vision. The vision he had for his life, for his children, his children's children, and his country. No barriers, no boundaries, no limits. So we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. But we do not grieve like those who have no hope. For President George Herbert Walker Bush had that hope. His faith sustained him throughout his life of service, and we pray that faith will be a source of comfort for all those who mourn the loss of this good man and great American. President George Herbert Walker Bush loved his family, and he served his country. His example will always inspire, and his lifetime of service will be enshrined in the hearts of the American people forever. May God bless the memory of George Herbert Walker Bush. May God comfort his family and friends. And may God continue to bless the United States of America.
Vice President Mike Pence delivering a powerful speech there, recalling his meeting with former President George H.W. Bush and how the former president honored his own son.
Incredible service there for former President George H.W. Bush as night falls on Washington, D.C. there at the Capitol Rotunda. You heard Mike Pence speak, and that was, I think, Ben, you said it best, a powerful speech, but not just that, a beautiful, incredibly moving speech about his relationship and his meeting with the former president, and this letter that just was magical that he received to honor his son, Mike Pence's son, who had served on the USS George Herbert Walker Bush.
He was preceded by Reverend Patrick Conroy, the House chaplain, who was the first one to speak at the podium there, then followed by Leader Mitch McConnell, who shared so kindly, too, that we stand in mourning, but also in gratitude. Gratitude for George Bush, for his wife Barbara, and all that they gave to the United States over the years in so many different ways. Speaker Paul Ryan also said his character second to none and so many other wonderful things before Vice President Pence took to the microphone as well.
And so often we talk about a president's legacy, and I think it is safe to say that in his case, it is that idea of such a wonderful character, such wonderful integrity that he had, not just during his time in office, but in the years that followed. He oftentimes, we've heard about Bill Clinton talk about this, and former President Barack Obama, that they would go to him and they felt very comfortable speaking with him, and he was very supportive of the work that they did, even when they were of different parties.
Approachable, relatable, a gentleman who gave in service, as I said, in so many different ways over such an incredible amount of time. Even though a modest operator in his Washington ways, think of all the people he touched along the way. To hear Paul Ryan say the first president he voted for was George H.W. Bush. He's pretty remarkable as he stands as Speaker today.
Think of you as a young 20-something getting the opportunity to work for the president at the time and how that affected your view of politics.
There is no question that, and as young and as impressionable as I was, that it was the best job of my time and a chapter that I recall fondly decades later, ask anyone else in that room who was also serving the president at the time. And it's true of anyone in any administration, in any White House. That is a very treasured moment, and we all knew it was an honor to be there. But to also work for a man that we respected so greatly, it meant so much.
So moving, and to see his son there, and you see him sort of, battling those tears as you would, if your a parent passes away. But the last time we saw a ceremony like this for a former president was now 12 years ago for former President Ford. And you said it best earlier when you talked about the protocol that goes into a ceremony like this. We didn't see President Trump there, but we saw Vice President Mike Pence.
This is a well-oiled machine. It is personal and it is intimate in every way, solemn in every way, but it is by the books. And you can be sure that all the people, the seating assignment, the folks that have been invited, those that will be allowed to be there, those that are in the rotunda now versus the public viewing in coming days, those that will be seated inside National Cathedral, it is a calculated and well-orchestrated event.
Every second of it.
You mentioned Gerald Ford, the last president to lie in state and Capitol. The last person to lie in state at the United States Capitol, of course, was Senator John McCain in August of this year. Former President George Herbert Walker Bush, now the 32nd American to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol. And there you see Nancy Pelosi, the former and incoming House Speaker, as well as Paul Ryan, the outgoing House Speaker, a Republican and Democrat, and a rare moment of bipartisanship under that dome, bipartisanship created by respect for that man.
And keep in mind, so many people referencing George Bush's ability to reach across the aisle. It was a signature of his, nothing he boasted about. He did it quietly, he did it often. It was never a battle out there for him. It was always a competition, right? He liked to win. He was a fighter in so many ways, but he also was a gentleman first. Reaching across the aisle, something that came easily to him.
Yeah.
And now the vice president and his wife laying a wreath there in front of the former president's casket, which will just about wrap up the ceremony here under the dome at the U.S. Capitol, but just now beginning days of commemorations.
National Day of Mourning being on Wednesday, this days of mourning really, which began on Friday when the former president passed away from his long battle with Parkinson's, as well as a number of other illnesses. But tonight, even though you're seeing this here at the Capitol Rotunda, there is a service of sorts going on in Houston, where he was from, where people are being asked, the public, and you can shed some light on this, Julie, a little bit more. They're being asked to wear colorful socks in honor of the former president, which was something sort of interesting about him. He would wear these sort of loud socks to events.
It's one of the cheeky sides of George Bush that some and many knew about more once he was bound to a wheelchair, right? Those ankles would show just a bit more. But I think he always had fun, funny, cheeky socks, and it was his signature for sure. And we talked about, we heard from Sam Skinner mention how, he was in one of the cabins at Walker's Point, and the president brought him a cup of coffee in a bathrobe wrapped, and it said the President of the United States on it. He had a sense of humor about himself, a rare quality in a high-ranking politician.
And it's something that you don't think about when you think of the former president, because he was such a gentleman and had this incredible character that I don't think you oftentimes remember that sort of funny side of him.
But real in every way. We also spoke with Michael Bush over the weekend, another Chicagoan who was a press aide for him back in those days during the administration, and mentioned too that when he too has been to, say, Walker's Point, that the president walked in and was grabbing his bags and clinking on the air conditioner when it wasn't working properly. He was just a human too, which is what people, is a little off-putting.
Yeah. The U.S. Naval Academy Glee Club now performing. Let's listen in.
us pray. Eternal Father, strong to save, in whom we live and move and have our being, we praise you for your generous providence that provided our nation and world with the gift of your servant, President George Herbert Walker Bush. Lord, we're grateful for the privilege you gave us to learn and grow from his integrity, kindness, heroism, courage, excellence, service, intellect, humility, civility, and spirituality. As we celebrate this well-lived life, challenge us, O God, to also leave the world better than we found it. Continue to comfort those who mourn. Touch each member of the Bush family with your mercy, love, and grace. And God, support us all the day long until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world lies hushed and the fever of life is over and our work is done. Then, in your mercy, grant us a safe lodging and a holy rest and a peace at last. We pray in the name of George Herbert Walker Bush's Savior and friend, Jesus Christ. Amen.
The benediction from Senate Chaplain Dr. Barry Black there, recalling intellect, humility, spirituality, and so many other qualities that came to define the life and legacy of George Bush. Now we'll watch his family members have a moment.
So this looks like the final walkthrough of the family through the rotunda before that public viewing begins tonight in just about, I'd say, an hour and a half or so, and it will run until early Wednesday morning. Thousands and thousands of people expected to line up to pay their final respects for the former president. And then you'll have a huge funeral service, which is where you will hear the eulogies by a number of people, including President George W. Bush, the president's son, also former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney of Canada, former Senator Alan Simpson, Republican of Wyoming, and then some of the other speakers. And Julie, you can probably give us some insight as to what we might hear from John Meacham, the Pulitzer-winning historian and author of that biography of the 41st president, because he was actually at the former president's wife's funeral as well.
Not that long ago, and a very close family friend, a man who is wise in so many ways, but also humorous, which is one of the things that the Bushes are able to do, is laugh. and lovingly laugh at themselves as well. I think it is all part of that trait of modesty that I don't know that it was preached so much by the president himself. It sounds like it was something that was handed down to him by his mother.
That's an excellent point. His mother said, don't use the word I, don't talk about yourself. And later, when George H.W. Bush went on to public service, it created sometimes an awkward speech pattern that Dana Carvey and others loved to lampoon. But it was about humility and about not making the moment about yourself, wasn't it, Julie?
And he certainly lived that. It was his, he followed it every single day, and I think he tried to carry it on to his family as well. It gets harder when you have a big family like that. But he was that kind of guy that it wasn't that he was afraid of the limelight, but I think he wanted to give credit where credit was due, and it wasn't always just to him. So I think his modesty, you would think, could really take a person out of the political race, especially in a city like Washington, D.C. But he managed to handle it with such delicacy and still be a leader at the same time.
Which is difficult to do.
And as we look at these final moments here at the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., a reminder of the developments and activities we're going to see over the next couple of days. As Lourdes indicated, there will be a public viewing of the president, the 41st president of the United States, as he lies in state there in the Capitol. Then, of course, a funeral at Washington's National Cathedral before the former president's body is returned to his home state of Texas. Actually, a rather interesting moment. His body will be placed in its casket on board a train, and then it will be taken back to Texas A&M, where the George H.W. Bush Library is.
It is a short ride, but it is also a significant one, and kind of harkens back to when he was running for re-election. At least my recollection of it is back in 1992, and they took a whistle-stop tour across the country through the Midwest. An incredible experience to ride aboard the train with the president at the helm, really at the caboose, quite frankly, at the back, he and Mrs. Bush, riding right along. And it was an incredible way to really touch voters, maybe future constituents and ones you hadn't locked in, because when he hops off the back of a train, as many presidents have in the past, he's a rock star. Stops in a small town and has the human touch in a way. The human touch is now through your digital devices, right? It's a whole different way to reach the public. But this was the good old-fashioned way, and I think it's quite symbolic to see him back on a train to his final resting place.
Such a beautiful service throughout the day. Thank you so much, our Julie Unruh, who has sat here with us throughout the afternoon as we try to recap and show to you the services for former President George H.W. Bush. We're going to go to a short break, and we'll be right back.
Want to give some Chicago kids a better Christmas? Come out to the 16th annual WGN Morning News Drive-Thru Toy Drive, December 14th from 5 to 10 a.m. at 2501 West Bradley Place. All toys go to the Chicago Park District to help brighten a child's holiday. So come out and see Santa and the Morning News team and drop off a new unwrapped toy. Or drop off a new unwrapped toy at any Uncle Dan's location now through December 13th and receive a 20% off coupon for one full-priced item.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas with Antenna TV.
Now you're talking.
Christmas Eve, we'll unwrap holiday-themed episodes of your favorite shows. Gather round the missile's flow.
Kiss my breast.
And sing a Christmas carol.
We'll make this the happiest Christmas ever.
While our wise guys bring you frankincense and mirth. Cozy up to Antenna TV for a classic Christmas collection. Christmas Eve starting at 4 on Antenna TV.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Uncle Dan's, Chicagoland's premier outdoor outfitter, has more good news. In addition to up to 30% holiday savings, we have up to 70% off all clearance items. Plus, enter by December 15th for your chance to win a $2,000 shopping spree at udans.com.
They move like this. Bark, bark, bark. Oink, oink. Milk come comes from a cow. There's a little red thing on the bottom, and it squirts milk out of it.
To learn about Bright Directions College Savings, its investment objectives, risks, and costs, read the official statement available online. Check with your home state to learn if it offers tax or other benefits for investing in its own 529 plan.
I wish I had a cow now. I don't.
Together, we can change the news. Find out how at safekids.org.
Uncle Dan's, your premier Chicagoland outdoor outfitter, has good news. We're giving away a $2,000 shopping spree plus up to 30% savings on all your favorite outdoor brands. Enter to win and get great holiday deals. Visit udans.com today.
Another day of cleanup after a rare December tornado hit central Illinois. Entire neighborhoods, as you see there, suffered severe damage as that tornado tore through the streets of Taylorville. At least 21 people suffered storm-related injuries. It is estimated the Taylorville tornado may have been an EF2, which carries speeds as high as 135 miles an hour.
Rare to see a tornado in December in Illinois.
Well, in Illinois, that's very rare, but it's starting to happen around the country, certainly more often. 23 tornadoes in the state or in this area, preliminary number for the previous weekend. So let's take a look at how things have been for us today. Today, much cooler. Well, there's a city underneath all that cloud cover and the light snow that we saw today. Nothing heavy throughout today, and we were flirting with the freezing line. We're actually a little bit above freezing for much of the day. So we did a change in precip type a number of times today. And now as we come to you, we find just a little bit of a light rain snow mix, which is going on in portions of northwest Indiana. But that is about it. Take a look at this visibility. Valparaiso down to 2.5 miles. We'll take you there with WeatherBug. And you can see they have been dealing with a little bit of everything. At times there's been snow. At times maybe a little bit of ice and also some rain. Very rough conditions there in Valparaiso right now. The good news is that this precip is not going to stick around very long. We're going to dry out very quickly, I think, on into this late evening and overnight. This computer model is probably a little bit overzealous in leaving the snow in there. Just kind of flurry activity for us tonight. If you're traveling south and east out of Chicago, just keep in mind, though, we are kind of looking at that very light mix, wintry mix, which is continuing across that area. Our computer model shows about a ½ inch of snow potentially for Valparaiso. Going to be tough to get that, though, with the temperatures very close to, if not above, freezing. Right now at O'Hare, we're at 35 degrees. Midway, the high temperature climbed up to 36, and at the lakefront, we were up to about 36 degrees, 11 degrees cooler than yesterday. Right now, we're at 31. Winds out of the northwest at 15 miles per hour. That's down a little bit. They were at 20, 25 miles per hour earlier today, but it feels like 20 as you walk outside. Factor in those winds. Currently 33 degrees at Lansing, 27 for Woodstock. Aurora, you're at 32, and down to Joliet, we're reading at 34. 24-hour temp change does show that we're just cooler than where we were this time of the day yesterday by some 5 to 10 degrees or so. We got the wind speeds, and they are significant. Winds coming down the lake there between about 5 and 15 miles per hour. That gives us wind chills in the teens as you look towards DeKalb, 28 degrees as you look towards Crystal Lake, and Bartlett about 21. These are your temperatures. We got 31 right now again for Chicago. Madison reading at 28 degrees across the region. We're finding generally dry conditions to our north and west. That's what we can expect. But how about this? There's going to be a big old storm. Will bring us flurries and cooler temperatures, but down south it's going to bring snow. We're talking accumulating snow this upcoming work week. Look how far south that is. That's even into portions of Georgia and potentially into portions of the Carolinas. We'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. Tonight we'll see the low temperature fall down to 25 degrees. It's going to be cloudy. It'll be cold. Some sporadic flurries for us tonight. And then tomorrow the high temperature is going to be back up to about 33 by the afternoon. A typical high this time of the year would be in the upper 30s. 26 Tuesday night. We're expecting continued cloudy conditions, a few flurries at that time, from time to time. And then from Wednesday, we'll have a high temperature of 33 degrees. We'll see cloudy conditions and turning breezy. It stays quite cold. And how about Friday? Ouch. 25 is the high temperature. Typical high would be about 10 degrees warmer. Saturday, 29. But we do see a warm up here. Sunday, we're up to about 33. And Monday, we climb to 35 degrees. So lots of sunshine comes our way. No big storms, but man, it's going to be cold next couple days.
Yeah, at least the sun kind of, makes you feel like it's a little bit
Makes
warmer.
you feel like it.
It tricks you.
10 minutes later, it just
reality
rips
comes
up your
back.
coat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Joe and Micah have the day's top stories next at 5.
Discover pure entertainment with the new Samsung QLED TV from Apt. With ultra-high definition resolution and the bolder colors of QLED technology, you'll experience the best picture ever available from a Samsung TV. Let our experts help you find the perfect Samsung TV for your home. See the entire Samsung lineup at Apt, where you'll always get guaranteed low prices, award-winning customer service, and free delivery. Apt, pleasing people since 1936.
So they say it's a man's world? Well, I don't see anybody's name on it. While they were out doing their thing, we slowly changed all that. We changed all that. Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Drug abuse isn't always from a dealer on the street. More teens are finding that high right in their parents' medicine cabinet. Through legally obtained prescription drugs, nearly 2 million Americans get hooked abusing prescription drugs every year. And that includes thousands right here in Chicago. Please protect your family, safeguard your meds, talk to your children about the danger of addiction. Visit the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids at drugfree.org.
Help Chicago kids have a brighter Christmas at the WGN Morning News Drive-Thru Toy Drive, December 14th from 5 to 10 at 2501 West Bradley Place. Drop off a new unwrapped toy and meet Santa and the Morning News team. All toys go to the Chicago Park District.
Now at 5, saying goodbye to former President George H.W. Bush. He's now lying in state at the nation's capital ahead of Wednesday's day of mourning.
Cold weather sticks around, bringing a few flurries to some areas. Tom Skilling has the updated forecast.
And road closures on the west side as police investigate shots fired. We'll have an update next.
This is Chicago's very own WGN Evening News at 5.
At the top here at 5 o'clock, the nation begins its long goodbye to the 41st President of the United States.
At this hour, former President George H.W. Bush is lying in state in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Short time ago, at a service at the Capitol, the Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell pointed to the former president's record as a decorated Navy flyer while talking about his strength in the face of adversity.
A steady hand, staying the course. That's what George Bush gave us for decades. Decorated aviator, congressman, ambassador to the United Nations, envoy to China, CIA director, 8 years as vice president, and our commander-in-chief. Through the Cold War and the Soviet Union's collapse, he kept us on course. When the rule of law needed defending in the Persian Gulf, he kept us on course. With his even temperament and hard-won expertise, George Herbert Walker Bush steered this country as straight as he steered that airplane.
Reporter Omar Jimenez has more on the plans for this week's funeral services.
The nation paused Monday for the first of what will be several days of public services and memorials, all to honor a president who gave a lifetime of service to his country.
That spirit of service and giving back was ingrained, and I think that has carried through the generations.
I think that the service he gave to America will not be matched anytime soon, and the experience he brought to the office will not be matched anytime soon.
President George Herbert Walker Bush died at his home in Houston Friday at the age of 94, surrounded by family and friends.
My own personal view is that people should mourn the life of George H.W. Bush. We're celebrating a life that was so well lived.
After a brief ceremony at Ellington Field, members of President Bush's family, including his son, President George W. Bush, and his service dog, Sully, who spent Sunday night next to the president's casket, all boarded a presidential 747 renamed Special Air Mission 41, landing in Washington for the last time. President Bush will lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda on Monday night through Wednesday morning. Wednesday has been declared a national day of mourning, and all current and former U.S. presidents are expected to attend a funeral service at the National Cathedral. President George H.W. Bush will be interred Thursday at his Presidential Library in College Station, next to his wife Barbara and daughter Robin. I'm Omar Jimenez reporting.
Illinois Senator Dick Durbin is in Washington to honor President George H.W. Bush. Before he left Chicago this morning, here is some of what he had to say.
His life story is an inspiration to have basically volunteered to serve in World War II as a Navy pilot at the age of 18, to go through basic training to learn to fly those Navy planes right here in Chicago off Navy Pier, where they had the instruction for young pilots, and then to be involved in what was nothing short of a heroic effort in the South Pacific, leading to his plane being shot down, his two crew members dying in the process, and he survived. Throughout his life, he always found a way to serve this country. When you think back of George Herbert Walker Bush, you think of a man who you may not have agreed with on every issue, but he was a man who respected the office of the presidency, who made a point of trying never to lie to the American people, and who made us proud when he stood up for America in a great transition in this world.
Omar Jimenez mentioned some of this just a minute ago, but here are more details on what's ahead over the next few days. The president will lie in state through Wednesday in the Capitol Rotunda. Funeral will be held on Wednesday at Washington's National Cathedral. President Trump has declared Wednesday a national day of mourning. The former president will be laid to rest Thursday on the grounds of his presidential library. That's at Texas A&M University, next to his wife Barbara and their 3-year-old daughter Robin. Stay with WGN and WGNTV.com for complete coverage of President Bush's funeral.
We do have some breaking news to tell you about on the west side here. A police SWAT team now investigating reports of shots fired. WGN's Patrick Elwood is live near Cicero and Armitage with that story. Patrick.
Hi, Micah. Within the last couple of minutes only, police and paramedics have cleared the scene here at Cicero and Armitage. We don't have a lot of information, waiting for more from police, but this is what we can tell you. The first responders were officers in that SWAT team. The official word from police is, initially, this started as a call of shots fired at the 1900 block of North Cicero, which is a very busy, populated part of the city with homes and businesses. Home Depot is just to the right of me. So out of abundance of caution, they pretty much shut the whole area down. Across the street from the Home Depot, about a block south from where I am, we did see a couple of people being led away. It did appear that they were under arrest or certainly in custody at that point. We still don't know why. Again, efforting more information. But police have cleared the situation or the area here now, so it's back open to traffic. But boy, it was quite a mess for a good several hours, beginning about 1 o'clock this afternoon. We'll find out more and give you the very latest coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. For now, though, we're live at Armitage and Cicero. Patrick Elwood, WGN News. Back to you guys in the studio.
Patrick, thank you. Take a live look outside now. The cloudy, cool weather sticking around.
Tom Skilling has an update for you tonight. Hey, Tom.
Yes, indeed, guys. And boy, cool weather is the word for the coming week. I'll tell you one thing, at least it'll be quiet. We don't have any repeat of the storms that we've been so dealt with so often in the last week and couple of weeks around the area. High temperature today in Chicago made it up to only about 34 degrees. Cold day with a lot of cloud cover in the area. Normal high is 39 this time of the year, and the range across the area was 31 to 39 degrees. Quite interesting. We're in December now. This is our coldest month. We start with normals of 40 and 36. We're down to 32 and 17 after that.